Mina with the draft resolution, I with mina still. That's just on the policing stuff and what we're trying to do with the current RCMP contract with the province. And we'll explain those. As soon as we can get the Zoom set up here, then it is a Zoom meeting. That's Edith. So Faulkner sent in a Zoom. Edith, I was trying to show you that. That was. Yeah, okay, but then not this one, not here. But we're trying to hook up that law firm into here. No, I understand, but that's the whole. You're just waiting for the host to start the meeting. And did he email that invite to you? There, that's right. That's right. You go to my email here, right there. Yes. That's weird. So right here. No, 10 a.m. No, this is Edith stuff. Get out of here. Go back to my email. Get out. This. No, you want to. It puts type in Shelby. Shelby? Shelby. Here's it all from her.
The gallery, I just don't know because all we have is Leroy.
Yes,
Okay,
that's what we're supposed to have.
so all we have is, black, we have no picture for Leroy.
Check 1, 2.
But you're still able to see us? And our volume's okay?
And there's no chance that we're going to be able to see you?
Check 1, 2.
Good morning. The chief wants to proceed with the meeting. To open our meeting with a prayer. Today's agenda is pretty much straightforward. Policing. With the drug dealing and the bootlegging that happens that's affecting the health and safety of every person in this community, including families. Kinanis nigono anuts, maga muetemati tak ta kayamiano, ketiat simino kwetsemana agisimus tamagwag, kawimino panikma mopin. And the two justice letters that you see here as what went out to the Justice Ministry, we still on this part, lobbying this stuff. And the resolution that's there is a draft in terms of what the best policing model that our people rightfully deserve. So, Dinah. I see it.
Se katisi ai miana no sakagene wante kisi minupane kipiti ko inaise kapisin tutamak ideas tagi pagit ni gatege Lord kinas komitnan hanus kagisigak minanasit eminosigisigaw hanuts magagis kisyag menanike tute minanak kaispanigutsik kanagategutsik their loved one Ewanik mina ACMS tamwa ko kanuts egewan idiskisyak. Sige mi anya magawiyak ewaniyak. Mina tati si saweni tamano mapitugoin ke wanani ka isiani mo tsigatege. Tagisi itsira po istatuak inni sini kisaisi. Mina teisi itsira po istawagok. Kunigani wa kisawisto animenu kaisiatsik. Nigan skagwagok. Tsiga mekisteni tagok omapitugoin. Nasit miste Hispanik. Kitawin no. Magat Jesus kinas komitnan. Kinatesi ka na opmiak that you are the footstool of the earth, Lord Jesus. So when you make si pentu tagik, minega gagutsi, petu tagik Kristo, kamutsi, wapatagik, so when you matsi Kristo. And nas komitak, hanotsi ako gagisigak. So when you make no tagayak, in Jesus' name, amen.
I would say good morning. Thank you, Taina, for words of wisdom and prayer. Emino siku tawi nagapeta ni gana na kagneo na tutamak awayu. Hemete machi tak Chief of the Nation David Monias kapigis kotigo opening remarks about the challenges we're faced with policing, the current policing contract with the RCMP, and the options we're looking at in terms of what we need to do to bring objective standard policing. Agamina, to talk about the impacts it has on public safety. Agamina, what it takes, what it's going to take us collectively as a people to keep our community safe, to keep our people safe, and the effects we face and feel when people aid and abet in addictions and drug dealing and bootlegging that hurt many families. And we've lost many loved ones as a result of these challenges we have. Chief and council are one of the options to make a change and impact to make the community safe. But there's programs and services that are available. And in the end, though, it's the people. It's the people, you, the audience that are listening. You need to help to make this community safe. Like the saying goes, it takes the whole community to raise a child, and it's going to take the entire community to keep a child safe. So, without further ado, I introduce Chief David Monias this morning. Thank you, Chief, for pointing out some of those issues today.
Okay, today we are meeting us in terms of Bimitsika, that we will be discussing the problems we have in our community, and what we had taken an approach back in last term to create our own police force. That's one of the things that we wanted to do, not under the band, but under the Bimitsikamak. There's a couple of things that we have to take into consideration to police our own people. We need authority. We need authority to do a few things. One of the things that we want to do is create law. We have to create law in our community in terms of what is against a law for us in Bimitsikamak. We also have to look at the regulations and how to implement that law, and also how are we going to enforce that law. I think the main thing that we wanted about is enforcement, and that's creating our own police force under Bimitsikamak. We had, that was the idea that we had looked at in, to address something that's a little bit different. Because we always say, this is our nation, this is our territory, this is our land, these are our people. So we have to create something under Bimitsikamak to enforce the law and to enforce, to make sure that we address things like drug issues, even looking at people who assault other people, people who steal, people who harbor criminals, people who actually doing bootlegging, drug dealing, and stealing, all those kind of stuff. We have to make it our own law, and we have to have enforcement. Right now, we don't have a law on that. We have a little bit of the bylaw on the ban side, but that's the ban side. Trying to not mix up the two between what the the safety officer are doing, the RCMP officer are doing. The reason why we're trying to do something different is RCMP are not really doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're not enforcing all our stuff that we want them to do. A lot of times they're looking at protecting the rights of criminals rather than the rights of citizens. The safety, public safety is a big important thing that we want to look at. So we want to create a real good law, real good regulations, a really good enforcement body, which would be the Pimitsikamak Police Force. That's the whole idea, but we want to look at how are you going to do that. And we would like to see some ideas in terms of what we're going to do. And I think that's the thing we wanted to bring it forward, because we always have all these issues and people are saying, please, you guys should, chief and council should do this, chief and council should do that, right? We can create laws, we can create regulations, we can seek funding and partnerships to create an enforcement body. One thing we can do is enforce and actually go to drug dealers and people who commit violence and actually police people. We can't do that. That's not our role. That's why we have staff to do that. We have police force to do that. Because it is dangerous. A lot of us that receive death threats. We have threats to be shot, beat up, or threats to our families. So we have to create something that's a little bit that can take care of that business, take care of the business of criminals activity. And that's what we're trying to do here. So I was talking to some of the people, because sometimes the police don't respond or don't respond right away. When we phone that 2345 number or 911, it takes a while. And sometimes when we call for help, it doesn't come right away. Sometimes way too late. So hopefully that we create something a little bit different that's under our own governance. Because the other side doesn't really work on the ban side, right? There's totally different things that are happening on that end. We have safety officer program and you have the RCMP program. So how do we replace that? What do we do? What do we put in place? That's what we like to talk about, and that's what we had started working on through former counselor Lee Thomas. At that time, I worked with alongside David Leroy Maswagan at that time, and Councillor Maswagan is continuing that work to do that, and that's what we're trying to talk about today, and to see how we can create our own police force and how can we address criminal activity in our community and keep it safe, have public safety. And we had also hired Terry McCaffrey as well to help us out, because he's a former police chief and a former police officer. He doesn't do frontline. He does more of the planning, the development, and coming up with ideas in terms of how to do that. So that's the difference. So that's what we're trying to do. So I welcome you, each and every one of you, for being here. Tatamaskat na tagaya kapiti. Yung may gato tamaswa tasigi siya pinigyak. Mana swente yung nostag na tini tamaga sa nisnan. Tasyo may siya pinigyak. Tasyo na suyak. Ubang ayo si magan si saute. To sis tamaswa gisna no. Tapasugo na mag si magasiga mik. Mina semaga sakta na hok. Ans muna gwas mano panegute netitige yung Kutagan Magastek Band, Chigatek. That's a different entity, different topic. We'll deal with some of that stuff under the band meeting on that when we have our next meeting on band issues. But for now, it's going to be Pimitsagamak and Pimitsagamak Police Sports and Pimitsagamak Law. That's what we're looking at, and we welcome your advice, your guidance, and how to make that move forward. And we'll get our workers here to start working on the language, how to make it work. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chief. So I am I'm going to introduce legal counsel, Julian Faulkner, Shelby Percival. She's also Aboriginal, Indigenous relative of ours. We stay with the Anuchite, just like the other young lady we seen here yesterday. So it's exciting to see some of our own people starting to take part in these different professions, especially at the legal front. And just to support the Chief's opening comments here, Terry, as former police officers, what we're looking at and examining is what policing standards should look like. And in simple language, ngayon ni mo kaise paminisiga mistigo segwen na witawin nyo na aspito sa amet te simagan sak porque gon mina win no mina mistigo sinak awa ego magisna no kanto tamak kanatsinus tamak, because our people deserve those standards. And remember, policing is not just a statutory requirement under Canadian law. When treaties were made by the Crown in right of Great Britain, what the Queen promised our people during the treaty, she said, we will provide you our red coats to protect you from molestation and harassment. We shall prohibit fire water. So if you look at a history, how did they penetrate our land? Through the Trojan horse they call treaty. To engage in these discussions so they can access our land. What's become very clear, the treaty relationship we have with the Crown right now, the evidence we see now is this is a convenient relationship. It's a one-sided relationship. The treaty promises that were made to us, maybe we've seen 5% to 2 to 5% of those benefits under Treaty 5, okay, under the British Treaty. So that's why it's important. Kinano po kagyunipit tamaso no magaitiguego gamagan. Kinana mina po kagyunuate na tansiga isiwa pata maksimagan sin. Muna ina nagagagot tagit, muna nagiwat tapata go now. Maga, tagwepyat tagani mut kitinimino. Kigetiat siminok, mots tagigan amaskatsik. Aset tigetiatsik. Tuntagi piata gani mutsu kagata gimenegas kago tsugutso simisyo usimyo tsapanyo. Koni pero nunigi gumawag. Pastawan yun. Awasis usimaw tamenegas ko tumusumo guma. Mino nigi ko. Ako heugo mo tsatagos kewin. Ati tinay ni misweta ito epanyo. Kego maegwenak. When I go out at Tagusinagin Oak, it then Taguan, Hegate Apian, oh, Musikas, Nituten, and Tapuetigo, Kiwetsipanu, 1,500, 2,000 people take Yatsik. Munagutse, Animan Mitunit, Paminitsig, when you go in your Maganyan, no semenut Kimisigit, no. The Tatas in a 10,000 at the go. I go get the Magis Sogitus hat, Simino, and Anish Sipanik, who pig Oswin. Anuts, Ego can no sui, Ego can no so, Agoma. Mot Nantanus, the grannies and grandpas, the parents, Kita with Ossimisio, I hope Chepata, Gomeno, Uta, Hotochu Piggy with Sigumeni, Metigagi Sigaske, at Casket Theatis. Score, Happy Goga Megasid Matsais, Kagita Tau, Capitsugan Gemay Mustigenio, Magota Niga Nigasagu cheat no, Mr. Guatsang Apachita and Gagitwet. Eganima Omenu Mr. Guatsinaganimutak, cell phone. We've become a prisoner in our own cell, even at home. We don't even talk to each other, we text each other, and we're sitting in the couch next to each other. It's changed so much, the language has changed so much. Now you don't know anything. Papa, you don't know anything. Dad, you don't know anything. Mom. Good common sense, guys. I think that's what a lot of us learned. Tough love. Customary law. Law. The papers we have are written aspects of administration of the law. But what were the customs of our ancestors? What did the mother and the grandmother do? Tago siya sa musto to peg nutsiga hidapit hutso mo tayo nagan. Migo apega no pa tamanapi to tasko epiti. Et you chose misit et jansko tapet et jansko tapet. Pinskat nuttigo. That's where the word nuttigo comes from. Mantuete pamas where nut sint mat sinigis. So we've lost a lot of our customs. Kagagwa nigmana gimama no gogomeno pastegan, the red willow. Motanut kiganop manos kate abuse ito mental abuse. The system. So one of the first steps towards our national strategic objective of healing the land, healing the people, and healing the nation is to talk about protective services. Misama protective services, public safety, policing is just one aspect of it. Program delivery is one. Community crime prevention is another one. What do? We chief and council encourage people to call police when they see things, to provide statements when they see things. By us remaining silent to the criminal enterprise that's happening in our community, we're enabling, we're aiding and abetting. We're just as guilty by turning a blind eye. You know, Chimoaswin. Yet you see it in the camera. Then what? So one of the other healing strategies we're working on right now that Chief and Council sign off is land-based healing. Nothing extravagant, just epitsitsik, just being out on the land, it heals them. Mind, body, and spirit. But we make things complicated. That's the problem. That's our problem. So what do? Chief and Council is coming to you today, and more sessions to move forward, like Chief said. Terry is our primary public safety planner. Nistamuta agitago si ana pero mistay nagachita menu tatuskin. Semag magimene agesko. Agigway katena at sigati to tatuskin aganak. It's unacceptable. And I stand by him. I trust in him. I believe in his vision to make sure that we have objective policing services here. But we're going to get into that. We're going to introduce Julian Faulkner, our lead legal counsel, on his policing file. The two letters you see and a draft resolution that's here were drafted by them. Okay? So I don't know how the volume is going to be. Shelby, can you hear me? Can you respond by saying hello, hi?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can you hear
Okay,
us?
we're going to put the mic to theirs as we start your presentation. I don't know if you want to put up your PowerPoint on the screen, Julian.
Yeah. We're going to do that now.
Okay. Okay. How? Kay testamago, Katsimustago, this lawyer, the steps their firm has taken. So that you're aware.
We've got a picture of you now.
Yeah, Chief and Counsel provided. This process is very expensive, and we provided a retainer to this firm as well, so that you're aware. Because nothing comes for free. They need to get paid to do the work effectively. So, but I'm going to give it to Julian, so you, as an audience, you can listen to his presentation. And thank you, Chief, and the people that are here, welcome. Julian.
Thank you, Councillor Muswagen. Are you able to hear me okay? You're able to hear me? My name is Julian Faulkner. We now have video, so we're honored to be able to both hear and see you. And just doing a voice check, are the people that the community members sitting in the crowd, are they able to hear us as well?
Yes.
Okay. So what we're going to do is going to make some remarks, introduce ourselves. We're here to talk to you at Councillor Muswagen's request about issues of safety in your community. We are honored to be here. I'm going to start with simply introducing myself. My name is Julian Faulkner. My colleague beside me is Shelby Percival. We're going to take some time to explain who we are. We're both lawyers, but we can still be friends, I hope. The idea of our presentation today, I think Councillor Muswagen's right by the microphone, so I'm okay. The idea of our presentation today is to discuss with you options for safety. And I just want to emphasize that in discussing these options or giving this advice, Chief Munoz, councillors, we recognize that this is simply one perspective and some advice from some lawyers. The whole point of self-determination The whole point of sovereignty is you can ignore your lawyers. So we give this advice and we offer it humbly, but we recognize that there are many choices for you to make as you go down this path. We are simply identifying some of those choices. I want to acknowledge at the start of our remarks that, of course, we recognize that you are gathered on Michikamak territory, recognized by the colonial state as Cross Lake Band of Indians number 276, and that you're signatories to Treaty 5, and we are honored to have the opportunity to talk to you in that way. So there is, I also want to acknowledge the prayer that was given earlier. Again, we are humbled to be able to participate in your process today. I want to reflect on the word safety for a minute. You know, people talk about policing matters as a justice question, and then they end up discussing colonial courts and other matters. But when we're talking about policing, I prefer to stay with the word safety, because really what we're talking about is the ability of the leadership and the community to stay safe. And when we're discussing safety, I know that it cuts right to the heart for you. I know you've had a recent loss in the last few weeks, Mr. McKay, and I want to express my condolences at the tragedy that led to his death a few weeks ago. I completely appreciate the kind of trauma that can create, and I just want to express our heartfelt condolences. What we do at this office at Faulkner's LLP is provide legal supports in a bunch of different areas to our clients. I have been practicing for over 35 years. I'm an old fart, excuse the language, and we are a small operation. We have offices in Toronto and in Thunder Bay in Northern Ontario. We move across different provinces because we provide support in a number of different areas, particularly Indigenous policing, but other areas. We are lawyers on the child welfare matters that are going on at the CHRT. We act on a variety of different matters in giving advice in policing and other areas. In giving that advice, we've gained certain experience, and realistically, our relationship as lawyers from a colonial system has changed over time. I've been practicing over 35 years, and I can tell you that our business has included having the honor of acting for the recently passed Justice Sinclair for the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We also are part of the legal team, or were, for the special interlocutor into missing children, Kim Murray. We have spent a great deal of time trying to learn. And what I learn as we go on over time is I learn about how much I do not know. And one of the ways that we learn is by actually meeting people, developing relationships, and learning from you. I wish we were there in person. We were unable to be there in person this time. I can tell you that our way is to travel and to, if we are welcome in your lands, to meet you and to learn. We don't believe in remote lawyering. It's not ideal. We do it when we have to, but we believe that the way to learn is to meet the people and spend time with you and start to learn your ways so that we can be more helpful. So with that, I'm going to start the PowerPoint, and then Shelby, my colleague, will take over at the right time, and she'll also be presenting as well. So we have a presentation that we'll be happy to provide a copy to you as well. Basically, it identifies the work that we have been doing specifically with Councillor Muswagon, as well as Lee Thomas, and the councils. I would emphasize that I think it's useful to you, starting from the beginning, to sort of explain in a little more detail the kind of work our firm does, and then we'll get right into what we've been doing for your community so far. So you'll notice at page 4, please. You'll notice that I mentioned before the idea of traveling. Well, our firm has the honor of supporting communities across Northern Ontario. We have represented Anishinaabe Nation, consisting of 49 communities, 39 of which are fly-in communities. I'm a pilot with over 4,000 hours of flying time. So I spend a lot of time in the air, attending in different communities and attempting to provide support. Our work has included acting for example, Anishinaabe Police Service. We have been their lawyers for now 18 years, including negotiating a legislative provision that provides now for legislative policing in Ontario for First Nations. We also act for the Indigenous Police Chiefs of Ontario, which consists of 9 self-administered services. We provide advice to First Nations in Northern Saskatchewan and Alberta when it comes to policing as well. So we have broadened in terms of the scope of the work that we cover. And in doing that, we've been able to identify the different options and to develop a team capable of addressing those options. We have created a safety and Indigenous policing team. We call it SIP. I always have to have a fancy name for everything, a fancy label, but the Safety and Indigenous Policing Team consists of not just lawyers in our office, but also policing specialists, including a former deputy commissioner of the OPP. And I was pleased to hear Chief Muñez and Councillor Muswagon talk about the benefit you have in Terry McCaffrey, because Terry will tell you that I had the honor of giving him legal advice when he was chief of police in respect of with Kwemikwong, and I can honestly say to you that I had nothing but important and educational experiences with Terry. He helped me develop and understand knowledge about safety needs for Indigenous people. And when I was asked to work with Terry McCaffrey in respect of your community's needs, I was absolutely thrilled. I can tell you that that work has led to important strategy sessions that happened in Winnipeg in March, and then action since then. This is not a presentation about just words. This is a presentation about action we've already taken, and with your instructions and with your authority, possible further actions we can take. I wish I could tell you that we have solved things. We haven't. I wish I could tell you that our actions so far have meant important change in your community. Well, you know that's not true. But we have taken steps, and we'd like to go over with you why we took those steps and what the plan is going forward, subject to your approval. Now, I talked about planning sessions, and I don't know, is that what I see on my screen? Is it blocking their screen? No. So you see Pimicikamak strategic planning sessions, March 4th to March 5th. Are you able to see that, Chief Muñez?
Yeah.
Okay, terrific. My screen shows something blocking it, so I got all confused as to whether, I don't know if you can move that, but it confuses the heck out of me. On March 4th and 5th, originally we had been invited to attend in your community, but with a combination of the evacuations and then other emergencies, it became not really viable to attend in your community. And I need you to know that flying up to your First Nation. I saw there's an airport, an airstrip at Norway House. I've landed at Opaskwayak before. I absolutely look forward to the day I get to land at your community and spend time there. But since we couldn't, it was agreed, and Councillor Muswagon led the initiative to meet in Winnipeg. So the Safety and Indigenous Policing team met with representatives of your four councils. The goal of the session was to facilitate discussions on policing options and community safety for Primishkamak. And I want to emphasize that it was a productive 2 days. Members from the Executive Council, the Elders Council, the Women's Council, and the Youth Council participated. Now, during the 2-day sessions, discussions of your stories designed to educate the lawyers on the challenges you're facing and the lack of resources by virtue of the really terrible policing response that Canada and Manitoba have provided for your policing. Now, arising out of the 2 days and having heard the perspectives, right, and identifying what your situation was, we took certain steps, and we're going to go into those steps with you in a moment. I do want to emphasize, and I think I have the list here, that the folks that attended included the members of the Elders Council, Flora Jane Ross, Roy Jones Scott, Jackson Osborne, members of the Women's Council, Marilyn Muswagon, Madeline Muskego, Anne-Marie Ross, Margaret Scott, Lee Thomas attended, of course, Councillor Muswagon was there, Tremaine Trout from the Youth Council, Conley Muswagon from the Youth Council, and of course your Director of Justice that I already talked about, Terry McCaffrey, was there. So Mike Omand as well was there, the Community Restorative Director for Cross Lake. So we were blessed to meet with a diverse group that helped us understand the challenges you face. Now, I'm going to sort of skip to the bottom line very quickly, Chief. And when I say bottom line, I'm going to ask Shelby to pull up the section of the act that comes from the legislation in Manitoba. Now, I know because of our work on policing that we do, I know that there is a belief that Canada as a treaty partner is responsible. And of course they are. But there is a technical reality to how the law is drafted and how responsibilities are shared for policing that need to be discussed. Because in my opinion, that technical reality makes the province very much on the hook. Now, what am I talking about? Let me give you an example. Under the provincial legislation, the Manitoba Police Services Act, all right, Section 2, it's a simple section. You know what it says? This is a quote, and I'm reading off this page. The minister is responsible, all right? This is the Justice Minister. Minister Wiebe is responsible for ensuring that adequate and effective policing is provided throughout Manitoba. Throughout Manitoba. Now, when we look at the terribly inadequate resources that govern current RCMP deployments in your community, completely inadequate. And we look at the lack of safety in your community. Is there any possibility that anyone could argue that you receive adequate and effective policing? The answer is no. And do you see in this section, it doesn't say the minister is responsible for ensuring that adequate and effective policing is provided throughout Manitoba, except for First Nation communities. It doesn't say that. It just says throughout Manitoba. Can you bring the screen down? Yes. Now, in saying throughout Manitoba. This is a provincial piece of legislation. And I need to emphasize this. One of the ways the provinces have been ducking responsibility is because a shell game is played. They point to Canada and they said, well, if Canada would just do A or B, well, then we would help you. And this has been going on for a very long time. What we determined, and this is lessons learned because we started our work in Ontario and we've been expanding. What we determined is, in fact, a long time ago, the provinces decided they wanted to take over policing as part of a broader justice responsibility. Many don't understand that. Many think that Canada is the major driver around policing because of a certain program they started for Indigenous people. But the truth of the matter is, and I'm going to emphasize this, what I just showed you, those words I showed you, the words that say that the minister is responsible for adequate and effective policing, that the minister is responsible for adequate and effective policing, no, I mean, not for me on the hard points. Those words that the minister is responsible for adequate and effective policing throughout the province, right? They don't say throughout Manitoba except for First Nations. It says throughout Manitoba, meaning as we speak today, they're not complying with their own law. They're not complying with their own law. Now the question becomes, what do you do with a minister not fulfilling his statutory duty? Now, in addition to having the statutory duty, because I've shown you the law, it's a simple one. Let's pull it up again, page 20 of the PowerPoint. And again, we'll be providing all of this to you, making it electronically available to you. The minister is responsible for ensuring that adequate and effective policing is provided throughout Manitoba. Now, with Terry McCaffrey's help, we've identified circumstances where we've simply compared white communities, similar size, in the roughly same regional area as Pimicikamak. And the community we identified in particular was Selkirk. And the numbers for Selkirk, in terms of policing numbers, are remarkably different. And what do I mean? Well, let me give you an example. In the case of Selkirk, Manitoba, go ahead, a population of 11,000, and that's it compared to Pimicikamak, between 8 and 10,000. Their RCMP complement of officers is 18 officers plus 6 support staff. As I understand Pimicikamak, we are talking about 5 RCMP officers. So how is a community, a white community, deserving of 18 officers plus 6 support staff, whereas you get so much less? Do you see in that section anything that says the minister is responsible for ensuring that adequate and effective policing is only provided to white folks in Selkirk? No, it's throughout Manitoba. So this minister, right now, as we speak today, is in breach of his legal obligations. He not only has the obligation to do it, we can also show you he has the means to do it. And I'd like you to pull up the section that describes what I mean by he has the means to do it. You see, people see RCMP and so you think Canada. And of course you do. But let me show you something. Under the legislation actually says the government of Manitoba may enter into one or more agreements with the government of Canada to have the RCMP act as a provincial police service and provide services in all or any portions of Manitoba that may be designated by the minister, and additional services set out in the agreements. And so the minister provincially runs that portion of the RCMP. Do we have that section? And why do I say he runs it? Because of course they're quite careful. The commanding officer of the RCMP in Manitoba is accountable to the Minister for Policing Services. So not only does he have this legal duty, he has the means to carry it out, because he's actually the provincial minister in charge of the RCMP. Now I'm going to take down all the screens for a minute, because I'm going to try to talk to you, and it would be so much better, Chief and councillors, if I was in the same room, and I want to be fair to Councillor Muswagon. He wanted us to attend on the 19th in person, and I had to tell him a week or a week and a half ago that we just couldn't make our calendars change for it. But as we sit and talk today, I wanted to get a feeling from you, Chief Muñoz or councillors. Did you know that the provincial minister has this obligation and the means to control the RCMP? Did you know that? Was that something that had come to your attention?
No, I knew. I knew that. There's at all.
That's right. And so it becomes a question of how is the provincial minister fulfilling his obligations? Well, you see how he does it in Selkirk, right? But magically, when it comes to the First Nations, you are deserving of a lesser, an inferior form of safety. And that's just flat out discrimination. You don't need to hire a lawyer or pay money to know that. I understand that. We're not finished. I'm just saying that, just technically speaking, this is very much about putting responsibility where it lies. Why did it play out this way? It played out this way because some time ago, the provinces decided they wanted to run policing for white folks. They didn't take into account Indigenous people when they took it over. They just took the whole thing over and didn't ask any questions. So now, what does one do? Well, when we met in March, we heard the stories from your councils about the experiences you are having in your community. We had the chance to meet face to face for 2 days and learn some stories. Obviously not all the stories, and we have a lot more to learn, and we look forward to that. But in that short amount of time, we realized that the situation had become so serious and so dire, and we had used a method in other places with results. We recommended issuing a public safety notice. And Chief Muñoz and councillors, that led to the creation of correspondence directly to the minister, the provincial minister, and others. And could you pull that up, please, Shelby? Now, this public safety notice that was ultimately signed is dated March 11th, and you'll see the signing page. Can you go to the signing page, please? You'll see that this public safety notice, signed by Councillor Muswagon, is copied to officials across the board, right? It's copied to the 4 councils. It's copied to your leadership. It's copied to the Premier. It's copied to the Minister of Public Safety. It's copied to the ISP Minister. In other words, what you see there is this was a public safety notice issued by your community, identifying the realities, and now could you take us to the main paragraph, please? Identifying the realities and challenges faced by your community, that in all honesty, you are unable to keep your community safe. The purpose, and I'm reading from the letter now, the purpose of this correspondence is to provide an official public safety notice that the health and safety of our people residing within Cross Lake, with a population of 9,000 on reserve and another 600 of members across the community, are in severe jeopardy due to your failure to ensure local RCMP deliver adequate and effective policing. We are writing to provide notice of this ongoing public safety emergency and demand that in your capacity as minister, you exercise your statutory obligations. We demand that you disclose the RCMP staffing model and then to actually deploy the number of officers necessary under their own numbers. So stopping there, I'm going to pause. You can bring the screen down, because what is startling is despite this letter, and Shelby, help us on the dates of the follow-ups, please. Despite this letter and a follow-up on, go ahead.
The first follow-up was on May 29th, 2026, and we have just sent another follow-up July 29th, 2026.
May 29th, July 29th, and the original letter in March, and not a whisper from the authorities. And I understand, Councillor Muswagon, you have heard nothing in answer, am I right?
Nothing.
And have any of the councillors or Chief Munoz, has anybody heard a whisper in answer to this correspondence?
Nothing.
Well, I can tell you, and we have the honor of acting in a number of different this is the worst example I have seen in a long time of cold, callous disregard. It is troubling that they would have completely and totally failed to respond. Now, we provided, and this was what was important, this wasn't done as a Hail Mary sort of send a letter and see what happens. This was done as part of a larger plan. And so where I'm going to go next is to show you or demonstrate to you that the way the law and the courts work is that when a statutory official, like this Minister of Safety, like Minister Weed, when they have duties, and when the colonial legislation creates statutory duties on them, there are methods in the courts to force a public official to do their duty. In other words, it is not simply a question of you asking, you're entitled to have him perform his duties. And that process of going to court, we set out in a legal opinion that we have provided to you. And I'm going to ask Shelby to pull that opinion up as part of the PowerPoint. We're going to go back to the PowerPoint presentation. Because, again, this was not just a talking exercise. This is part of a larger plan. We have been in other courts for other police services in other provinces where we have had to get the courts involved. And I believe we're in the same situation here, but that will be for you to decide. So can you go to the opinion, please? The next, thank you. So on July 15th, we provided a written opinion. And what a written opinion means is, as lawyers, we set out a plan, a playbook for bringing a court application for you to force the minister to comply with his laws. So you go to colonial court and get a judge's order requiring the minister to comply with his legal duties. We think this method is an important start in forcing the minister to deploy additional officers to Michikamat, because by no stretch of the imagination is the current amount of officers sufficient. And did you find out, was there any change? Now, we're here together virtually. Can I ask you, Chief Munoz and other councillors, since March, when you issued the public safety notice, have you seen an increase in presence of police officers?
Oh, we have.
I didn't hear you, sorry.
Oh, we.
So they have gone completely silent. Well, the reason we put the time into developing a legal opinion for you is we have gone to court before federal court before to get orders against governments when they have failed Indigenous people on issues of safety. We think this method would be an effective way to force the minister's hand. Next slide, please. It's called a mandamus application. It's a fancy legal word. Mandamus means making a statutory official, like this minister, fulfill his statutory duty. When there is a duty under an act, you can require the minister to comply with that duty if he refuses to. I believe that you are in a clear position to ask for it, and that the minister has a legal obligation to provide your community with a level of policing you currently receive. That is not a long-term solution. I am addressing what I would call the short to medium term. The longer term solution, you referred to it before, Chief Munoz, the idea of a self-administered service, the idea of you having jurisdiction and sovereignty over your policing, and that's something we'll speak to and talk about. I'm trying to deal with this as a short to medium term problem and then the longer term issue. Now, we want to show you, in my view, what mandamus means by way of a legal obligation. So we've already gone through the demands, so I'd just like you to explain to them what it means in legal terms, Shelby.
Sure. Thanks, Julian. So we've set out.
If you finish the slide, bring them down unless you have.
No problem. So in terms of using a mandamus application, we think that it is an effective solution in the short to medium term to get some additional RCMP officers assigned to Commish-Kamak. Specifically, we set out already how under the legislation there is the obligation on the minister to provide adequate and effective policing throughout Manitoba, with no exception for First Nations or First Nations communities. A mandamus application specifically would be through the colonial court system, that while we understand the colonial courts have traditionally been agents of harm to Indigenous people, we think that they can be used to force the minister to comply with that duty, which means any additional officers, on the understanding that from the RCMP in your community would help towards achieving adequate and effective policing. One of the elements of mandamus is I should say, a clear demand for performance of the obligation that the minister has. And as Julian mentioned, we have set that out in the correspondence that has followed since the public safety notice and the follow-ups that we have done, all of which remain unanswered, and there has not even been an acknowledgement in respect of those letters or the public safety notice. So we think that that element of the mandamus application is well set. We also think that in terms of what the community would be looking for through a mandamus application, that is very clear in the legislation what the minister is required to do and how he is not currently achieving that. And that is stuff that we took from our strategic planning session, specifically on March 4th and 5th in Winnipeg. And I know that Julian had also mentioned in terms of Chief Muswagon and Terry's roles in helping to bring everyone together, and that we were truly honored to listen to the four councils and listen to the experience that people have with policing provided by the RCMP, both currently and historically. We understood how councillors are often called in terms of dealing with issues or public safety problems when RCMP officers or safety constables are not available. Another that we heard was that the RCMP lacked the cultural responsiveness that is required to police the community.
Just stopping there, and please understand, when we talk about going to court, it isn't because I understand how we perceive the Toronto lawyers. I'm actually from Montreal, and Shelby is a Mohawk background, but we understand we're perceived as these Toronto lawyers telling you that a court case is the answer. I have to tell you, under no circumstances can I guarantee that we will win. Trying to identify ways to fight back. Sometimes we are successful and sometimes we are not. That's the problem with court. We can't guarantee anything. But we think this is a legitimate way to basically force a minister colonial laws. But it isn't because we can guarantee a result. But let me explain it this way. With the number of letters that we have presented to the minister and the premier that they have ignored, we believe that you have a case to put before the court and to make a public and to draw public attention to, that they are simply ignoring you. When you combine that with what's going on, like at time that Selkirk is a mere 2 hours drive from you, is that right? Oh, it's 6 hours, Selkirk, from you? South? They have a population of 11,018 officers and 6 support staff. How do they explain this huge difference of treatment? We believe we can embarrass them into serious scrutiny, but we can't talk to you like snake oil salesmen and pretend that we just work. It doesn't work like that. These are pressure points that we're recommending because it involves action. There is a model for policing that the RCMP use to decide how many officers are appropriate to deploy. They're clearly not using it for you, but they're using it for Selkirk, or they're using it for Thompson. And we ask the question, why not? And in front of a judge, we believe that would bring significant pressure. So I don't sound slippery, but I can't guarantee you a result. I just think it's a strong argument, and it's an argument that needs to be made. It's a way of fighting back. We have a presentation next about what self-administered policing looks like. It is an important long-term goal, and one in which our firm has had the honor of helping develop police service, the largest being NAPS, which is now a police service of how many officers?
370.
There's 370 officers and civilians, 118 civilians. So they have gone from a police service that couldn't field an officer and a radio to a very large police service operating under legislation. And we helped shepherd them in that direction. And we're honored to say that policing looks different in NAN territory than it's not perfect, but it looks different. We look across Canada, our experiences in Saskatchewan, our experiences in Alberta, and we see that, like Manitoba, you're way behind what's going on in Ontario. And we would like to change that. It's just that simple. And with your current premier, there is no excuse for why he is ignoring you. And to me, there's an opportunity to bring real public pressure to bear on the premier. So I say this court case has this advantage of putting your story in the public domain. So I'm going to stop there for a minute, because if it's okay with you, Chief Munoz, if it's okay with you, Councillor Muswagon, I'd like to take some questions and see if we can promote some discussion or clear up. I'd like to take some questions and see if we can clear up any questions people have. We're happy to take some questions at this stage. I was saying, Councillor Muswagon, we'd be happy to take some questions at this stage. We're going to go on to talk about the options around self-administered police services, but we've done a lot of talking. I thought it would be good if we could help people with what we've done so far and whether they had any questions or comments.
Good morning. Just an inside joke here. I've been quiet for 2 days, so I think today I'll talk. Good morning, Councillor Scott.
Cameras on the fan on the ceiling.
Where? In the middle.
Something happened with the camera.
Can you see me now? Now you see me? Playing hide and seek here with you. Where? Where? Okay, I'll sit here. I'll sit here. You can see me? Yeah? Okay, Councillor Scott here. Just 2 comments or questions in regard to the mandates. Has it been filed? The mandates, has that been filed with the court? Okay, so if today approval is met with the consensus of the people that are in attendance, the timeline, what would be the timeline if you file it tomorrow? What are we looking at? They can't hear you. Wait. Wait. They can't hear what you're saying, but I can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Oh, there's an echo happening.
Yeah, there's an echo now. I don't know.
So every time I say it'll take 10 days, it'll become 100 days.
Use the laptop microphone, Vivian. Julian, can you hear?
Okay, so did you hear my 2 comments? Now what's going on? Okay. See, I shouldn't have talked. Well, did you hear my 2 questions? Yeah? Okay.
If we get instructions tomorrow, how long will it take to start the court case?
That was just my 2 questions.
Oh, I'm happy to answer that question. Should I answer it?
Yeah.
So it's hard to be very specific because we have to sit down and get enough community stories to put what we call affidavit documents together, which is your stories in writing for the court. And then once we've prepared those documents, we then file. But what I can tell you is we can file those, if the meetings happen and we get your community stories, we can file those documents within 60 to 90 days. And then it will become a question of when the court can hear us. So 60 to 90 days to prepare the court documents and file them. And then the court decides when they'll give us a hearing date. So I'm not trying to be a lawyer about this and not answer your question directly. It's they don't give you a schedule and say, okay, if you file on X date, we'll hear you on Y date. They don't do it that way. But we will press and say that it's urgent. But we believe if your community can meet with us, if we can have meetings and get your stories, then we will put them on paper. We've done this before. And honestly, the really, and the only word I have is disgusting part about this is the way your public safety notice has been ignored by the ministers. And I think that's going to be great in front of a judge. So I would like to get your story in front of the judge as soon as possible. That's why I say 60 to 90 days to prepare your stories. Once we file them, we get a court date. And that's from the time you give us instructions to do that. And I understand these are not easy decisions. There's significant money involved, and I don't want to act like that's not an issue. I don't, it's hard to have good news about legal fees, but we try to be transparent. So I'm happy to talk about that, but I do want to emphasize that we understand that it's an urgent issue, and I do not believe in lawyering, by generation. So it's your kids' generation that is the next time the court case is heard. I don't know if you've heard, but as an example, the sole source of drinking water for Winnipeg, this is Shoal Lake, right? We act for the Shoal Lake First Nation in Ontario. Iskatewasagagan, Shoal Lake 39. We've moved that case very fast. And we pride ourselves in getting to court and getting the right orders. So we're prepared to do that. But of course, we need instructions to do that. And we need to be able to meet with you and get your stories on paper. It's a real team effort. We need to learn from you. We need to learn your stories. I hope that answers your question. I can't hear anything.
Test. So the letters you've seen here, the first two letters that you've seen has to deal with what they call the mandamus. What we're trying to do is force the minister to force the RCMP to do the right thing in their current contract. The RCMP has contracts all across Canada, okay? They promised they would deliver certain policing services to whether you're a white community, a native community. So what they do is they sign contracts with every province. And that's what these two letters were designed to do, is to try and force the justice minister, who has the power, the discretionary power to force the RCMP to make sure there's objective standard policing. Because maybe Terry can explain this more here in front of you, but the current policing model is not being serviced well today. Right now, they're flying in police officers and flying in back, treating this as an isolated detachment. And with crime rate stats and everything, we're supposed to have a minimum 23, right up to 32 police officers here, and it's not happening. And the danger to that is this. When they bring in new police officers, they don't know our people. Unless if you live here to get to know the people, for example, because of that mindset they have, the way they're trained. And law enforcement is trained to protect themselves and to protect the public. But so this is where it doesn't get to be culturally sensitive. They respond to a call. They don't know who they're dealing with. As a matter of fact, they don't even know where they're going. Right? In the current contract, the Justice Minister Simagansa saying, hey, keep me tipamagin, so musita itatos kaya umuta tumina Simagansa tagi peso ay gugute nigigo nagusik itate. So that's what that is. So that's the first step. Because in kikiskente no kaginonep minagasamute mistiguso when it comes to inyo rapa minit tansime isaganop meet. Egutoma kawi petta kutak tagus keon kutak ni ma draft resolution tegastek. This time around, pimichiga magwina a policing model e we petta. Aga 4 councils magwa ni puguta ni mutagik. Kita saini sigo ke maga anak neo. And to create a task force from Terry. There's some of our members that are long-standing police service history. The professional police officers to be part of that task force in addressing this police negotiations. So that way, but one of the models we were looking at was a unique policing model, not just community-based, to be land-based as well. Because to make sure everybody's safe. So there's certain policing models that are out there that are like that. But I'm going to have Terry elaborate more on this policing.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Thank you, Chief and Council, for creating this space. And thank you to all the 4 councils for being here and for everybody that's in attendance. And again, thank you to Mr. Faulkner and his group for helping us with this path of creating safety and security for our community. Now, that being said, I just wanted to bring your attention to the mandamus process, right? What is this going to do for us? What I want to see, or what I'd like to see happen here, is this is going to hold that minister accountable. Hold them accountable to what they're supposed to do for us. They're supposed to provide adequate and effective policing services, safety and security for our community. They are failing. So what I do see this helping us with here is, yes, making the RCMP accountable to provide the officers that they're supposed to here, but what it'll also do, it'll open up space, hopefully, that we can create dialogue, that we can have a table created provincially, so our nation can sit down with the province and start talking about the building of our own police service and what that looks like and what our needs are. Because it's not just bringing in another colonial force, an occupying force, to be here and sit inside their castle and only come out when we call them. We want a community-based force that could be here, part of our community, not separate. So that's what the mandamus will bring to us. That's what going through that process will do. It'll start to make them accountable, because they'll be like, whoa, we have to respond to this. Just the fact that the Minister of Justice has not responded to any of our documents that we put forward to them is a slap in the face. He's ignored us. I do not believe that we should be ignored. And that's how Mr. Faulkner and his group can help us bring that attention forward, so that we can be heard, so that we're insisted that we sit down and we're treated as equal partners at that table. And then hopefully we can create a table where we can let the province know what we need. So I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Faulkner, unless there's more questions.
In what Terry was referring to is that we've strategically set this up now because they haven't responded, because they've been disrespectful. We have strategically set this up to be able to pounce on them, all right? You're hunting now. You're hunting to make a minister responsible. And he's starting to show himself. And you can get him in your sights. Why? Because he, the minister, and the premier have completely ignored your needs. So we've set them up now as irresponsible ministers who are ignoring you. We make the court case a public court case, which you're entitled to do, which it will be, so that they're in the public forum and there's public pressure. And we try to force them to change the resources they're putting into it in the short term, with a long-term plan about changing how you police your communities and having a representative service. Now, on that issue, I'm going to ask my colleague Shelby to start a presentation to you about a self-administered service and the choices that represents. So if it's okay with you, Chief Munoz, Councillor Muswagon, and other councillors, we're going to go into that portion of our presentation now. Is that all right? Okay, we'll start.
Thank you, Julian. So just getting the PowerPoint back up because we do have a couple of slides that will be helpful on this piece. There we go. So we understand that for Commish-Kamac, there are some options in terms of policing and ways to keep your community members safe. We recognize that that is a result. There we go. As Julian had mentioned, there are elements of the Manitoba Police Services Act, which is found on slide 23 of our presentation, which Julian mentioned we will send around electronically afterwards, that speak to the creation of a First Nation police service. So section 45 of the Manitoba Police Services Act says that the government of Manitoba, with the government of Canada and one or more First Nations, may enter into an agreement to establish a policing service to provide policing services to a First Nation community or a group. So just stopping there for a minute, that is in terms of whether you would like your own self-administered service that is Commish-Kamac focused, or whether it's a group of First Nations that come together to have a more regional service, but one that is dictated through First Nations understandings. The key point that we want to emphasize in terms of the creation of a First Nation police service is the section of the Manitoba Police Services Act, specifically section 47, that states that all of the provisions of this act, meaning the Manitoba Police Services Act, apply to a First Nation police service and its police chief, police officers, and police board. If there is a conflict between the Manitoba Police Services Act and the agreement that establishes the service, this provision in the agreement prevails. So what that means is, right now, across Manitoba, there are a variety of police services that operate and benefit from the standards that are set out in the Manitoba Police Service Act. As you remember, we have the section that we've already covered that sets out that the minister is responsible for ensuring adequate and effective policing across Manitoba. So those are the standards that any police service that is created under the Act would also benefit from. This is very different in terms of other provinces in Canada, and this is in comparison to Ontario, which Julian had mentioned earlier. This is a piece that already exists in the legislation. In Ontario, we worked with Anishinaabe Nation and NAPS, as well as the NAPS board and Ontario, to complete an overhaul and created over 100 amendments to the old Police Services Act, which resulted in the new policing legislation, the Community Safety and Policing Act, specifically to include provisions such as this that would allow First Nations police services to benefit from the same standards as other police services do. So as we mentioned, there are two models that Commish-Kamac could consider in terms of creating safety for your community members. A more regional service, or your own self-administered service that is specific to Commish-Kamac. We acknowledge that this decision is politically based on what best meets the needs of your community. However, we just wanted to bring to light some considerations in terms of both models of police services for you to consider. We'll start with the regional model. So for a regional model, that would generally be a larger service that would have more capacity. So that would mean that there are more officers available to deploy, more specialized units such as major crime units, homicide units, canine units, drug enforcement units, that type of thing. However, being that a regional model would include many First Nations, officers would be in and out of communities more frequently. In terms of infrastructure, detachments may or may not be inside the Pimishkmak community, which could create some travel time for the officers as they attend to issues that require attention in the community. Pimishkmak would also likely be sharing policing resources. So as you mentioned, officers, funding, and infrastructure. However, given the larger number of communities served and the larger population, there would be further and additional resources that would be allocated. Resources such as professional standards, major crimes, and specialized units would likely be brought in from outside the community. It presents the consideration of Pimishkmak being one voice in a group of other First Nations, but it also provides the opportunity that Pimishkmak might be able to partner with other First Nations in terms of specific policing and public safety initiatives. In respect of a regional police service, as we just set out through the legislation, the government would be required to properly fund such a service to ensure that that service meets the standards as set out in the Manitoba Police Services Act.
Just pausing it there.
Okay, just to stop you there for a bit. I'm getting some messages to people.
If I just may quickly, I apologize. I had a commitment. I set aside 2.5 hours. I have a commitment. I can come back. Shelby will continue with these slides, and it's been a real honor meeting with you today, and I'm sorry that I squeezed the commitment in. I thought 2.5 hours was enough time, and I feel badly. But we have these presentation materials, and Shelby will be more than able to set up, and my colleague David Schwartz will be sitting in with her. But I will be happy to come back and answer more questions or visit with your community. So I do apologize that I have to leave at this stage. And I mean no disrespect. I don't like stepping out of meetings, so I am sorry about this.
All right, you're granted to go. You're excused for a bit.
Thank you.
Because I was just gonna call for a quick lunch because we have food here, and people are messaging me that they're hungry and the food's getting cold.
You're getting hungry, eh? So
Maybe a half hour.
grateful.
I'll come back in a half hour if you don't mind.
A half hour.
All right, thank you. If I can get somebody to go bless the food. Madeline, you bless your food?